So who and how will Anthony Weaver do as a defensive coordinator? Can J.J. Watt still be a force? And what does the Houston Texans schedule look like? What is going on, guys? This is Wade here with Tongues Cat Gaming and Sports, and we are back with our sports podcast, episode number 4. And today we will be doing an in-depth look into the Houston Texans, and then looking at their schedule and seeing just how many wins I predict they will get, and can they get to the playoffs. But before we kick it off in today's episode, I'd like to go over some of the top sports headlines of the week. So earlier in the week, the NFL owners were getting ready to vote on new rules and then adding some tweaks to already previous rules. However, one of the more popular rule changes would be allowing teams to attempt a 4th and 15 scenario after scoring, instead of doing an onside kick to get the ball back. I thought this was a pretty good decision. As many of you know, the onside kick is pretty much worthless. There's just such a small percentage of getting it, and once the other team knows it's coming, it's just pointless. Now, of course, it's one of the greatest plays in football that you can pull off, but having something else that teams can do, I think, would be pretty smart. However, the 4th and 15, that's kind of short. 4th and 20 scenario makes a little more sense, I would think. So hopefully we'll be able to see it next year, maybe implemented. Or even, what about to attempt to get in the preseason? Just doing a preseason run, doing through those 4 games, and just testing it off. Kind of what the baseball does in minor league. Whenever they want to implement a new rule, they test out in the minor leagues before they do it in the major leagues. So I think that would have helped. However, when the voting came in, it was decided to be pushed back and have better details regarding when it could be used, how it could be used, things of that nature. As if you're going to implement something like that, you better have clear and concise rules so that teams can't keep manipulating and tweaking it. So, good decision by the owners. Hopefully we will see it within the next year or two, and I would definitely be really excited to see this on Madden, as it would just add another fun element to the game. Moving on to topic number 2, baseball. Baseball is still doing its best to try to find a way to have a season and do whatever it can to make that happen. Unfortunately, the owners are trying to pry every nickel and dime from not paying the players, and the players are having absolutely none of it. They have already agreed to have their pay reduced to whatever percentage amount of games they played. So, for example, someone who makes $20 million this season, if they were to play this season, they would only make $10 million if they played 82 games. So a sliding pay scale, which is a good decision. However, the owners want to have another pay reduction on top of that because of how much they are projected to lose with no fans and any concession revenue. So now that player who makes $20 million a season is already going to make 10, and the owners want to even reduce it even more to possibly $5 or $4 million. This has led to quite a bit of angst with all parties involved, and we even have Cincinnati Reds pitcher Trevor Bauer spouting off against super agent Scott Boras on Twitter, so it's such a fiasco. Who knows if we will see baseball this year? I really hope we do. I think we will, but it is kind of annoying that there just hasn't been any support so far. Both sides are just not backing down, and it is leading to a tricky slope that they're going to have to try to go through. And our final topic of the day, for all you college football fans, former 5-star quarterback JT Daniels is transferring from USC to Georgia. Daniels struggled at times as a true freshman his first year at USC, but unfortunately he injured his right knee in the 2019 season opener against Fresno State, and his backup Keaton Slovis, I hope I'm saying that right, went on to have a productive year, throwing for 30 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and was able to complete 71% of his passes. JT, on the other hand, his freshman year, he went 14-9 with about 59% of his passes completed. Unfortunately, though, for Daniels, he will now join a busy quarterback room in Georgia, as the opportunity to start won't get any easier, as another transfer, Jamie Newman, has joined, and he has a possible first round grade on him for the 2021 draft. And whenever football players transfer from team to team, they have to get a waiver and get it approved so that they can be eligible that current year. Because usually you have to sit 1 year. And so if JT has to sit another year, that means the 2021 college football season, he's going to have to compete against another 5-star quarterback for now, as it's Brock Vander something. I forgot to write it down. But he's so far a 5-star commit. But of course that can always change. So who knows what JT will be able to accomplish. It's not looking pretty good. He would have done much better moving to a situation that was more pleasant for him, obviously. But we'll see. Who even knows if we'll have a college football season this year anyways. So now, beginning our Houston Texans in-depth look at the defense, let's start it off with new defensive coordinator and first-year defensive coordinator as well, Mr. Anthony Weaver. So Anthony is entering his 4th season as the D-line coach for the Texans and defensive coordinator, of course. He was the 2nd-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens in the 2002 NFL Draft. And he played 7 seasons in the NFL as a defensive end and even finished off his last 3 seasons with the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, I don't remember him ever playing with the Texans. Of course, I would have only been 10 at the time by the time he retired. So, nonetheless, let's move on. Weaver is taking over Romeo Crennel's spot as the new defensive coordinator for the Texans. Crennel has moved to an internal staff position. So the players can still go talk to Rack, as they like to call Romeo Crennel, and get inside knowledge with that. But now Anthony Weaver is the hot man on campus. Weaver started working in the NFL in 2012 with the New York Jets and has previously worked with the Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns. He is a Rex Ryan disciple, and as crazy as Rex Ryan was, he was a very good defensive coach. Usually did well with blitzes and other packages like that. So that is positive. So expect to see a lot more blitzes and exotic blitzes. Weaver met with the media via a Zoom call, and a few of the takeaways were he wants to have an exotic looking defense, like I said. He wants the players to stand up and walk around before getting in their alignment to confuse the offense, which most teams already use this anyways, but it's just another twist that you can always throw out there. He wants to have a much more aggressive pass rush, as the Texans' secondary struggled big time with little to no action from the rush. The Texans finished 19th in the league with 31 sacks, 18th in the league with 42 quarterback hits, and the pass rush ranked 31st in the NFL with an 18.1% pressure rate. Only the Miami Dolphins were worse when it came to rushing the passer with pressure rate, as they finished off at about 16%. So it's obvious that the Texans had a very, very poor defense last year, but they were still able to make it to the playoffs some way, somehow, obviously thanks to Deshaun. So just a little bit of improvement there could really be a boon to this Houston Texans team. However, Weaver will face the Wolves right out of the gate as we play the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens week 1 and week 2. We must remember to be patient with him, though, as this is a rough 2-game slate to begin with any new defensive coordinator, and just a defensive coordinator in general, no matter whether he's got 10, 15, 20 years of experience. But, once again, how you play is just as important whether you win or lose. I know that is a cliche, but it is definitely true. If the Texans had lost to the Kansas City Chiefs 31-28 in a close, hard-fought battle, there would not have been anywhere near as much sorrow and embarrassment and shame than how they lost, being up 24-0 and then getting still blown out 51-31. So the What we really hope is these weeks 1 and 2, more than likely we won't win, but at least show that you belong. That is the problem with the Texans, is that they will beat a team like the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season and then lose to the Carolina Panthers and then lose to the Denver Broncos, but then beat New England Patriots. There's no consistency. So just having just a little bit more consistency can go a long, long way. And that's with every team in general. So now, moving on to the defensive line, we got J.J. Watt, Brandon Dunn, Ross Blacklock, and Charles Omenihu. So starting off with J.J. Watt, defensive end. He was a first-round pick in the 2011 NFL Draft. He has brothers both Derek Watt and T.J. Watt, who both play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he has only played a full season once since 2016, which was the 2018 NFL season. So J.J. Watt. Where to begin? I could really just have J.J. Watt and move on because everyone knows him, but let's get just a little bit more detail in this great player. So he's definitely a future Hall of Famer in my eyes, as this man has carried the Texans on and off the field through countless charity benefits and the love and generosity all across the nation. And, of course, he's been one of the best players on the field too, as his best seasons were from 2012 to 2015, where he recorded 4 consecutive 10-plus sack seasons and had 20.5 sacks twice. I know this might sound crazy, but I kind of forgot just a little bit just how dominant JJ was during that 4-year career, as he had 20.5 sacks twice. That is insane. It's kind of sad just to see how he's been now with all these injuries, and then just a couple years ago he looked like one of the best to ever step in this game. So for his career, JJ has 96 sacks, so he's just 4 away from 100, and only 34 players have reached the 100 sack threshold. He's also got 479 combined tackles, 158 tackles for loss, and 265 quarterback hits. He has just been an animal getting to the quarterback, but he's even done a little bit better, as he's also forced 23 fumbles and has recovered 15 of them. That is an insane rate. Now, of course, he's not always recovering the fumbles he has caused. He's recovering other team fumbles as well. But no matter what, if you get a fumble, you've got greater than a 50% chance to recover that ball. That is outstanding. And does anyone remember whenever J.J. Watt was playing tight end a few years back and he caught 3 touchdowns in the NFL season? That was pretty awesome too. Just a little side note right there. Unfortunately, though, Watt's body is breaking down, as he has only played in 1 full season since 2016, and he played in 8 games last year before tearing his left pectoral muscles. Although he was able to play in both the Texans playoff games, and hopefully he can come back stronger than ever and healthy, as if we don't have an NFL season, or if it even gets pushed back a little bit, that will still help JJ to recover his body, as he is 31 years old now, I believe. 32. So just to do a hypothetical and show how great Watt has been, he could have broken Bruce Smith's sack record of 200 sacks. So Watt has gotten 0.8 sacks per game, and it took Bruce 18 seasons to achieve 200. So Watt, if he was able to play, 18 seasons, Watt could have reached 247 sacks. So 47 more sacks than the all-time leading record holder. Now, of course, he's at 96 sacks right now, and he is not going to get anywhere close to 18 seasons. But it is kind of fun to play these little games just to show how dominant a player and has been throughout his career. So Watt has 2 years left on his then record-breaking 8-year, $108 million contract. He is due $15.5 and $17.5 million against the cap for the 2020 and 2021 season. I think Watt will finish out his contract with the Texans and retire following the 2021 season. I know. So we probably, in my eyes, we probably only have 2 more years with JJ. He will be 34 years old then, and with so many injuries he has had to deal with, I can't fathom him playing any longer after that. And this is even assuming he has only had minor injuries these next 2 seasons. It will definitely be a sad day for Houston Texans fans and even NFL fans in general once he does decide to call it a quit. So, this is one of those players where he has just done so much for the team, given it is his all, just like Andre Johnson did with the Texans. And you just hope that he will be able to go out with a Super Bowl or at least a chance to get there, as the Texans still haven't even gotten close before. And this is just one of those sad careers where a Super Bowl would absolutely enshrine him in the Hall of Fame. One more thing though, as J.J. Watt had a Zoom call a couple days ago, and he was super excited and pumped up for Anthony Weaver. He kept showing raw emotion and just happiness and generosity when talking about Weaver. However, the reporter asked him a question about Bill O'Brien, and it pretty much went how you expected. So, the reporter asked JJ what makes Bill O'Brien a great head coach and leader. And JJ Watt takes off his hat, readjusts his shoulders, while still giving his thoughts on what makes Bill O'Brien a great leader and head coach. And this is what he said. Bill O'Brien is a great leader and coach through the offense, and he's the head coach. And his job is to make sure everyone is doing what they're supposed to do on the offensive, defensive side of the ball. He is more on the offensive side, and that is how he is a head coach and a good leader. So he didn't give any examples, obviously, and he even mentioned how he is more involved with the offense than with the defense. So what is that saying? Does JJ not think he's even a very good head coach in general? So of course there's a lot of speculation with this, and I think it's pretty obvious to most that Bill is not good period, and someone should be taking him away. So that is about it with Mr. JJ. Let's move on to some of the other key players on this Texans line, and that will be Brennan Dunn, nose tackle. So he was undrafted out of the 2014 NFL Draft. He signed with the Chicago Bears before coming over to the Texans in the 2015 NFL season. He has been a rotational guy on the D-line since 2017. So Brandon, he's played in about 40% of the snaps since 2017 and was playing and rotating with former nose tackle DJ Reader. So obviously now Brandon's got he was until the draft, but he had a pretty full role now to establish what he can do as an NFL player. He signed a 3-year, $12 million contract extension following the 2019 season. For his career, he has had 88 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, and 1 sack. He is now expected to rotate with new draft pick, Ross Blacklock. So who is Ross Blacklock? He is the defensive tackle the Texans took in the second round out of TCU. He was more dominant at TCU as an inside pass rusher and weaker against the run. And in my opinion, he should be the starter from pretty much day one. So Blacklock was a freshman All-American at TCU. Then he missed his entire sophomore season with an Achilles injury before rebounding his junior season as he was named second team All-Big 12. So for his career at TCU, he has had 67 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks. Those are all pretty solid numbers for a nose tackle, as getting 5 sacks throughout 2 seasons is pretty impressive, as nose tackles are primarily used just to stuff the run. So when you can get someone who can also bring in that pass rush, that definitely is very, very optimistic. He was projected to go late first or early second in this year's draft class, as he did go early second. If not for this being such a heavy defensive draft, he most likely would have been a top 15 pick. So just to kind of show you how deep this class was, but also how good he was in college. Blacklock will need to work on his strength and technique to become the 3-down lineman he has the capability to be. Until then, expect to see him and Dunn rotate early and often until Blacklock can establish himself midway through the season. So moving on to the other defensive end opposite J.J. Watt, That's going to be Charles Omenihu. He's a 5th round pick in the 2019 draft by the Texans out of the University of Texas. He was a 4-year defensive end in college, and he had a pretty successful rookie season. So Charles was a 4-year defensive end who played in 51 games at UT even as a freshman. His senior season was his best as he's compiled 45 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 9.5 sacks. For his career, he finished with 116 tackles, 30.5 tackles for loss, and 17 sacks. So this man has done very good when it comes to rushing the passer. And the Texans definitely need that help. He shined as a 5 technique in college, which, if you don't know, that describes the gap he lined up in. So that would be across the tackle. And as an interior pass rusher, he also did a great job as well. As a rookie, he put together 13 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks to go, along with 5 quarterback hits. So the Texans are hoping he can make a decent jump from his rookie season, and unless they bring in a veteran like Everson Griffin or Clowney, look to see a lot more of Charles Omenihu. So outside linebacker Whitney Merciless, one of my more favorite Texans, who is pretty underrated in my eyes. He was drafted 1st round in the 2012 NFL Draft out of Illinois, and he has played his entire career with the Texans. He signed a 4-year, $53.5 million extension in December 2019, and he has amassed at least 5 sacks in all but 2 seasons since entering the league. That stat actually jumped out to me because I knew Whitney was good at rushing the passer. I never had any idea how good he was. He has played in either 15 or 16 games, all but once, which was the 2017 season, where he played in 5 games and then tore his pectoral muscle. He has compiled together 315 tackles, 57 tackles for loss, 50 sacks, and 105 quarterback hits. Anytime Watt has gone down with an injury, Whitney is counted on to bring the pass rush, and he usually moves from his linebacker slot to a rushing defensive end. With Weaver becoming the new defensive coordinator, look at Merciless to be involved in more blitzes and coming off the edge, and increasing his tackles and the 7.5 sacks he had last season. If you're into sports betting and can find a player to bet on with this stat, he is a dark horse candidate, in my opinion, to have a double-digit sack season. Moving on to the middle linebacker, that's going to be Benardrick McKinney, or B-Mac. So he was a 2nd-round pick in the 2015 NFL Draft by the Houston Texans. He signed a 5-year, $50 million contract extension in 2018. However, he has struggled in pass coverage. So B-Mac, just like Merciless, has been a great contributor for the Texans and has helped fill the void left by Brian Cushing, and was finally selected to his first Pro Bowl in 2018. He's been great in run defense, as B-Mac has 488 tackles, 34 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks to go along with 30 quarterback hits. However, he has struggled mightily in pass coverage, though last year, as quarterbacks completed 90% of their passes and scored 5 touchdowns when targeting him. Now, of course, some of this can be put on the lack of a pass rush by the Texans' front line. However, this is still an area McKinney needs to improve to help him become an all-around middle linebacker and bring the Texans a defense that teams can fear. So, who is B-Mac's counterpart? That is going to be Zach Cunningham. He was drafted in the 2nd round in the 2017 NFL Draft out of Vanderbilt. He has improved greatly each year, and he can become a free agent after this offseason. So Zach, I know I sound like a broken record, but once again, Zach has been very productive like his counterparts Whitney and B-Mac. Finding capable linebackers who are able to transition from the college to the NFL game is difficult. So we have been extremely lucky when we in this area of linebackers. Although Zach's strengths and weaknesses are the same as McKinney's, he has put together 324 total tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 7 quarterback hits. However, he has struggled in pass coverage too, as quarterbacks have completed 77% of passes when targeting Zach. So once again, he will definitely need to improve on this, and if he wants to have a big pay raise after this season, he is going to need to improve on this. In my opinion, it is a must that the Texans lock him up, as McKinney and Zach are making a great middle linebacker core. If they can improve in pass coverage, this will greatly affect everyone around them. Moving on to Brennan Scarlett, who was our outside linebacker. He was undrafted out of Stanford in the 2016 NFL Draft. He has mainly been used for depth and special teams, and he signed a one-year, $3.75 million contract extension in 2019. Like I said, Brennan was mainly a rotational piece and was behind Clowney in the depth chart. Of course, he finally got his shot following the departure of him last year. He did alright as he piled up 49 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and even forced 2 fumbles. He will once again have an opportunity to show off his stuff as he will be competing with Jonathan Grenard, who is the Texans' 3rd round pick in this year's draft. So, I hope Brennan does a good job, but I'm not really expecting much, as I do expect Jonathan Grenard to eventually overtake him throughout the season. So who are other linebackers to watch for? We also have Duke Ejiofor, who is entering his 2nd season. We also have Dylan Cole, someone who the Texans love on special teams and plays in passing situations. And then Jacob Martin, a 3rd-year linebacker the Texans got in the Jadeveon Clowney trade. So moving on to our defensive backs, which is our main area of struggle, in my opinion. So we got Gareon Conley. He was a former 1st-round pick by the Raiders in the 2017 NFL Draft. The Texans traded a 3rd-round pick for him last year. He had his 5th-year option decline, which would have paid him $10 million following this season. So Gareon, it was a bit surprising the Texans declined his 5th-year option, as they did give up a 3rd-round pick for him. However, they do protect themselves if he struggles again this year, which unfortunately is going to be more than likely. He flamed out in Oakland as quarterbacks completed 62% of passes when targeting him during the 2.5 years in Oakland. He was a little bit better with the Texans as quarterbacks completed 51% of the passes. He is still just 25 years old though, so Conley has plenty of opportunity to show that he was deserving of being the 1st-round pick he was. This is where it can get a little bit dicey, because if Gareon does have a decent enough season to where he shows that he has been able to progress and be a reliable corner, he'll more than likely leave the Texans and go to another team, as we probably aren't going to give him the contract he needs. So there is a lot of... He's got a big year. This is a big year for him to show that he belongs. Moving on to our main cornerback, that is going to be Bradley Roby. He was a 1st-round pick by the Denver Broncos in the 2014 NFL Draft. He's also a Super Bowl champion, as the Broncos won the 2016 Super Bowl, 2017 Super Bowl. One of those Super Bowls he was a part of. He signed a 3-year, $36 million contract after this offseason, and he's had at least 1 interception and 1 forced fumble every year. So Bradley Roby signed with the Texans on a 1-year prove-it deal and did well enough to earn his 3-year extension. He did end up missing 6 games with a hamstring injury, but when healthy, he was one of our better corners. Although quarterbacks completed 60% of their throws, they had a low pass rating at only 78, which is below average. So what is pass rating if you don't know? Passer rating in the NFL grades quarterbacks from a 0 to 158.3 scale. Yes, 0.3. And is calculated using a quarterback's passing attempts, completion, yards, touchdowns, and interceptions all together to show just how well quarterbacks are playing. It's a whole bunch of math, and it is way, way, way over my head. However, Roby is one of our most experienced corners, and he will be relied heavily on throughout the season to lock down the best playmaker on the opposing team. Getting a healthy season out of Bradley Roby is a must, especially after the extension we gave him. He will have to step up and show he can be a true number 1. So what other cornerbacks can you watch for? We got Vernon Hargreaves, who was a 1st-rounder from 2016, and he was released from the Bucs mid-season last year. And the Texans claimed him starting with Week 12. However, he got torched for 34 receptions, 356 yards, and 3 touchdowns across 8 games, including the playoffs. So not looking too good for Mr. Vernon Hargreaves, but we do need depth at that position. So that is a guy we can just throw in there. Lonnie Johnson, he was a 2nd-round pick from 2019, and he played in 14 games last year, and he also struggled mightily as well, as quarterbacks had a QBR of 111 when targeting him. Poor guy. He's been, throughout this offseason, he has been a main topic of discussion as what are the Texans going to do with Lonnie? Are they going to move him to safety? Are they going to keep him at corner? Anthony Weaver said he's going to keep Lonnie as a cornerback. He sees him as a cornerback, but we'll see just what is going to happen with him. And then one more player you can look for, that's going to be John Reed. He has no relations to Justin or Eric Reed. He was a 4th-round pick in this year's draft out of Penn State. He was used primarily as a slot corner and on man-to-man coverage. We will probably see quite a bit from him with so much uncertainty regarding this group. So hopefully this Texans pass coverage can be much improved. If not, it's going to be another long season when it comes to the defense. Moving on to our safeties, we have Eric Murray. So who is Eric Murray? I don't even know who Eric Murray was. So he was drafted in the 4th round by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2016 NFL Draft. He was traded to the Browns for Emmanuel Ogbah in 2019. And he signed a 3-year, $20 million contract. So Eric Murray, another head-scratching move by Bill O'Brien, as he gave up quite a bit of money for a fairly unproductive / inexperienced safety. Murray has only started 15 games across 4 NFL seasons, and has only started 4 games for the Browns due to a knee procedure he had in November. Many experts graded this as a huge overpay, as the safety market was much cheaper than what many had thought it would be. Now, looking back at it, it's even worse. I remember getting those notifications that the Texans signed Eric Murray to this 3-year, $20 million deal and going, who the heck is Eric Murray? I have never heard of him before. Now, no slash to Eric Murray. He is obviously a way better athlete than I will ever be. But for me to not know someone, that is pretty weird. Although he is still young, just 26 years old, we would have been better off waiting to sign a safety now, or use the money we signed Eric to help bring in much more significant players. But with Bob leading the way, there isn't much we can do. So we are just going to have to hope that Eric can be the man that Bill gave the money to. However, moving on to a much better situation, we got Justin Reed as our free safety. He was a 3rd-round pick in the 2018 NFL Draft out of Stanford, and he is shaping out to be one of the best steals of this draft class. He has 5 interceptions in just 2 seasons, and he played with a torn labrum much of the 2018-2019 NFL season. So this has been one of the most exciting young players to watch for on the defensive side of the ball, as he is always making a play or somewhere around the pile. He's been productive since day one and is a tackling machine just like his older brother. Through 2 seasons, Justin has 159 tackles, but 121 of those are solo tackles. So there's only been around 30 to 40 tackles where it's been a group. He is extremely strong and knows how to tackle, which is very, very significant for his safety. One area, though, he can improve in is his pass defense, but he got that down from 65% his rookie year to 60% completions last year. So if we can get that to about 52%, that'd be a very, very good improvement. It would be tremendous if we can bring in Eric or even another veteran safety who continue to provide the leadership and coaching from that position. We did sign Tashawn Gibson last year, who fits this role, but we did release him a few months back after we signed him to a 3-year, $30-something million contract. So once again, Bill O'Brien just handing out contracts left and right, and then those guys not producing. I am very excited, though, to continue to see how this kid grows and just what type of player he can become. And so should you. So finally, our defensive takeaways. It is imperative that our pass defense improves from last season if the Texans want to have a shot to make it to the Super Bowl. Deshaun is good enough to get them to the playoffs, but the defense has to lead during the playoffs. Although the pass rush has to generate more force, no questions about it, They only had 31 sacks last year, and as a whole, the Texans gave up 6.1 yards per play, which was tied for the Cincinnati Bengals, who, if you don't know, just had the number 1 overall pick and took Joe Burrow because they had the worst record in the league. I could go on and on and on about how bad this Texas defense was, but I think that also shows you just how good this offense is and can be. They were able to make it to the divisional round, and with just a few more sacks here, a couple more pass-up breakups there, you can go from one of the worst defenses to middle or even top 10. Anthony Weaver has a tough road ahead of him, but he's young, passionate, and wants to give the Texans fans something to look forward to every time they take the field. I have faith that he will be able to put out a much improved defense, and so should you. So now, let's take a look at this Houston Texans schedule. So it is one of the more tougher schedules to begin the season. As you can see, we are starting off Thursday night, September 10th. Now, of course, hold on before I go any further. This is all for now, of course. The COVID-19 situation can, of course, change all this, but for now, this is the NFL schedule. We kick off Thursday night football September 10th against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this was going to be a hard-fought game, but I do see Patrick Mahomes having a minute left in the fourth quarter and going down and kicking a field goal to start us off 0-1. Moving on to game number 2 against the Ravens. I do see us losing against the Ravens unless Lamar just has a down game, which is possible. But I do see us starting off the season 0-2. Hopefully, though, we have a better defense, and the defense has shown flashes that they belong. We get our first win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then get win number 2 against the Minnesota Vikings, and then get win number 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. If we can go 2-2 or 3-2 to begin the first 5 games, that is going to be very, very good, as there's a chance we could go 0-4 here. I don't think we will lose to the Steelers or Vikings, but there obviously is a chance, as those will be pretty good tests for us. So right now, in my opinion, we're 3-2 through 5 games. So we got our first, besides the Jaguars, we have our first division matchup against the Tennessee Titans. And for me, I'm going to give us a split with the Titans and Colts, because that's always seems to go how it is. So we're either going to be 3-3 or 4-2 here. The Packers, I do think we beat the Packers, as Aaron Rodgers has absolutely 0 wide receivers aside from Devontae Adams. If our run defense has improved and can slow down Aaron Jones, I don't see Aaron Rodgers beating us with the receivers he has right now. So then we got a win number there. Then Jacksonville Jaguars. This is where we really start piling up the wins. We get Jacksonville right there with win number, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll give us win number 5 there. And then we move on to the Cleveland Browns. That's going to be win number 6. The Patriots, win number 7. The Lions, win number 8. And then, and also the Lions is the Thanksgiving game. So make sure you tune into that one. So we got win number 8 there. The Colts, I think we slip up here against the Indianapolis Colts, and we're now at 8-4. And then the Bears, we get back on track, go 9-4. This time we were able to take the Colts down and go 10-4. The Bengals, we're going to take down Joe Burrow and go 11-4. And then the Titans, I'll give us a loss here just because we probably won't have anything to play with, and we go 11-5 or 10-6, 12-4. I think that is what we are going to do. This may seem a little more positive, but there's no way. And if you're a sports bettor, go bet this right now. Many places had the Texans winning 7.5 games. I'm sorry, but there is no way the Texans are only going to win 7 or 8 games. Bill O'Brien has too much luck to not go 9-7. And Deshaun is too good to not win 7 or 8 games by himself. So I do think the Texans once again have another good year when it comes to records. As far as playoffs, I don't know because I won't know how well this defense is. But that is for a whole nother story. So let me know what you think the Texans' schedule predictions were going to be. Do you see us making the playoffs? Do you see us winning more than 7 games? And how long will Bill O'Brien still be a head coach? Because I think he's going to get fired after this season, no matter how well he does. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you do, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe, share, do all those little fun things, and come in next week as we're going to be doing an in-depth look at the Houston Astros. So we'll finally be throwing out some baseball content. And for those of you who are fantasy football nerds and fantasy baseball nerds, we will be doing fantasy sports eventually. But I want us to get just a little bit more closer to having an idea if we're going to have an NFL season or not before we jump into that. Thank you for watching. This has been Wade with Tongues Cat Gaming Sports. Don't forget to put God above all. I'll see you next time.